Hey guys, I'm Sean. This is Long Long Honeymoon, which we sometimes call Loloho. In this video, we're talking Yellowstone, and I'm going to give you 5 must-see places in Yellowstone National Park. The goal of this video is to help you make the most of your trip to Yellowstone. These are in no particular order of importance. They're kind of grouped together geographically. Number 5, Old Faithful. You kind of have to go see Old Faithful. It's the law if you're going to Yellowstone. But here's the thing about Old Faithful. You not only need to see the geyser, you absolutely need to see Old Faithful Inn. It's one of the most unique and beautiful structures in the entire national park system. It is a treasure. And while you're at Old Faithful, you really need to tour all of those geysers behind Old Faithful. That is known as the Upper Geyser Basin. There are a lot of great hot springs and geysers back there. For example, Castle Geyser is one that stands out to me. A trip to Old Faithful really should include walking all those walkways out behind the star attraction. And by the way, when you're on those walkways, be mindful of bison, because you will probably see wild bison roaming around there. And it seems every year some tourist gets gored by a bison in that Old Faithful area. Number 4, Grand Prismatic Spring. Try saying that 3 times fast. Grand Prismatic Spring is the largest hot spring in Yellowstone. It's located in the Midway Geyser Basin. So like if you leave the Old Faithful region and drive north, the Midway Geyser Basin is midway between the Upper Geyser Basin and the Lower Geyser Basin, logically. But Grand Prismatic Spring is certainly the most famous hot spring in the park. You've seen pictures of it 1,000 times. It is not only massive, it has many beautiful colors. While you're at Grand Prismatic Spring, there's a little hike you can do. It's about a half-mile hike that will take you up around 100 feet in elevation so you can see the spring from kind of an elevated vantage point, because otherwise it's kind of hard to really take in its full beauty at ground level. I mean, you can still appreciate it and it's still impressive, but the most spectacular views are really above it. In addition to Grand Prismatic, I would recommend that you take in some of the other geyser basins. I particularly like Norris Geyser Basin, which is a little further to the north, and some people prefer West Thumb Geyser Basin, which is next to Lake Yellowstone. Now, Lake Yellowstone, sadly, didn't make the cut for my 5 must-see places. At the end of the day, Lake Yellowstone is gorgeous, but it's a lake. I mean, frankly, you're gonna look at it and you're gonna say, wow, that's a really beautiful lake. Okay, it's a lake. You know, so that's why Lake Yellowstone didn't make the cut. I'm not saying you shouldn't go see Lake Yellowstone. It's just not one of my personal top 5. But if you go to West Thumb Geyser Basin, you can see the lake and take in some geysers simultaneously. There is something to be said for that.
Yellowstone National Park. Bison out for a stroll.
Number 3, Hayden Valley. I have a particular fondness for Hayden Valley because during the time when I personally worked in the park, I worked either at Canyon or at Fishing Bridge. So Hayden Valley is positioned right between those 2 places. So it's kind of in my neighborhood. What I love about Hayden Valley are the wide open views and the guaranteed bison sightings. You're gonna see large herds of wild bison, most likely in Hayden Valley. Hayden Valley has Yellowstone River running through it. Yes, a river runs through it. And that can be a lot of fun too, because we have witnessed the bison sometimes crossing the river as a herd, which is a fantastic spectacle to witness. There are also wolves around there. Sometimes they will set up a den across the river. The wolves usually keep a pretty far distance from humans, so if you see a group of people with telescopes, they're probably looking at wolves. The number 2 must-see place in Yellowstone National Park, canyon. Yes, the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone has some of the most beautiful canyon views you're going to see anywhere in the world. And it's not just the size of the canyon, it's the color. The walls of the canyon have these beautiful sandstone reds and orange and yellow. And at the bottom of it, you're going to see the Yellowstone River going through it. And of course, there are those gorgeous waterfalls. There are really 2 waterfalls to see in the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. The upper falls and the lower falls. The lower falls is the more spectacular of the 2. You definitely need to stop at Artist Point. Artist Point is probably the most famous vantage point to look into the canyon. You're going to get just that classic, spectacular, straight-on view looking down into the canyon at the lower falls of Yellowstone. You should also go to Grand View. You should go to Inspiration Point. You can actually hike down into the canyon and get a closer view of the lower falls. I would recommend you do that if you're in good physical condition. Something to know about canyon, that entire area, it's actually a pretty high elevation in the park. The air is thinner. You know, when you hike down into the canyon, you're gonna have to hike all those steps back up, and if you're not in good shape, you are going to be huffing and puffing on that journey. Personally, I think canyon is the most jaw-dropping, beautiful sight in Yellowstone Park. Finally, the number 1 destination in Yellowstone National Park. Again, these are not in order of importance. The drive from Canyon to Mammoth. So I've totally cheated on this last must-see item. Why did I do that? Because when you go to Yellowstone, you're going to do a lot of driving. That's just the nature of the beast. It is a massive park. It's larger than the state of Rhode Island. There's kind of a figure-8 loop that goes through the park. This drive that I'm talking about would be the upper right portion of the 8 in that figure-8. There are portions of Yellowstone where the drive, frankly, is not particularly interesting because the forest is so thick on either side of the road that you don't really get those stretching scenic views. Whereas this particular drive, you go up Mount Washburn. There's a pass called Dunraven Pass, and Mount Washburn is over 10,000 feet in elevation. If you are an avid hiker, I would recommend that Mount Washburn hike. If you're just driving this pass, as you go up Mount Washburn, there is a chance that you will see bighorn sheep. I've seen bighorn sheep there, and that's an exciting, unique wildlife encounter. Once you get past Mount Washburn, you are rewarded with some beautiful scenic vistas. And I'm talking about views stretching out for miles and miles and miles to the horizon. To me, it's just one of the prettier areas of the park. Along this drive, you will find Tower Falls. Tower Falls is a waterfall that's over 100 feet in height. It definitely merits a stop, so check out Tower Falls. But just north of Tower Falls, on your way to Mammoth, you are in bear country. I've seen more bears in that stretch of the park than I've seen in pretty much the rest of the park combined. In that little stretch of highway from Tower Falls over to Mammoth. Yellowstone is not a zoo. There are no promises when you go to Yellowstone. You may not see a bear, but if you're going to see a bear, I would say your odds are pretty good there. And then when you arrive at Mammoth, of course, Mammoth has Mammoth Hot Springs, which are worth seeing. They're not my favorite hot springs in the park, but they're worth seeing. Just outside of Mammoth is the town of Gardner, Montana, which is not in the park. But after a long day of touring the park, Gardner has several nice little restaurants, and also you can visit the old Roosevelt Arch, which was once an entranceway to the park. Now it's not used as an entrance, but in many ways it is the spiritual entrance to Yellowstone Park. So you'll want to stop at Roosevelt Arch and take some photos. So that last must-see place is really that drive from Canyon to Mammoth. So that's it, guys. 5 must-see places in Yellowstone National Park. It's really difficult to pick only 5 places to see, but I know that a lot of people go to Yellowstone without a lot of time. You don't want to leave the park, especially if it's a once-in-a-lifetime trip, without visiting these places. Have you been to Yellowstone? What would your top 5 list look like? Are there other places in Yellowstone that you would prefer over this list of 5? I'm sure there are, because it's a massive park and you may have certain particular favorite areas of the park that differ from mine. Post a comment, share your knowledge and experience with our community. We love Yellowstone, and you can find us there pretty much every year with our Airstream at some point during the year. Until next time, as always, thank you guys for tuning in. If you're new to our channel, please consider subscribing. Subscriptions are free. What are you waiting for? Doesn't cost you a nickel. So sign up, join Loloho Nation, and look forward to more videos like this one. This is Long Long Honeymoon, where we say Loloho.
Hey guys, if you like our videos, a great way to say gracias senor is to visit our store on Amazon. You can go directly to amazon.com/shop/longlonghoneymoon, or you can go to longlonghoneymoon.com and click the large supply store icon on the main page. The icon is so large, I don't even need my eyeglasses to see it. In our store, you will find all sorts of cool stuff, including Long Long Honeymoon hoodies, Long Long Honeymoon t-shirts, my hat, my shoes, my old underwear, my self-respect. Everything must go. Proceeds from our Amazon store are reinvested into our show, which requires large amounts of duct tape and lubricant to keep running smoothly. Who let the flies out?
If you're wondering about my wife, she has a cold this week and has lost her voice. So she has an excused absence from today's video.